talking about, I guess I don't understand that word, so I'm trying to put it in my context of my culture to understand what it is.
Which one? Gnostics?
Yes.
Okay, we'll talk about them in just a second.
Thank you.
Okay, so right now we're going to talk about the Gnostics, the Neoplatonists, the early Christians, St. Augustine of Hippo, the Knights Templar, and St. Thomas Aquinas. All right? The Gnostics and the Neoplatonists together. They sort of form, I mean, you can separate them out and talk about different people, but they're all doing exactly the same thing. So they're from about 325 BCE to 485 CE. Alexander the Great establishes the city of Alexandria, Egypt, right around 331 BCE. This is where it all takes place. By 325 BCE, it is a thriving seaport and hosts citizens from everywhere. The great library at Alexandria was founded right around this time too, and scholarship flourished for 650 years until the time of the First Council of Nicaea, 325 CE. So this is the time frame, 325 CE, BCE, until 325 CE.
CE was
Common Era. The Common Era. BCE is before the Common Era.
Right, Common Era.
Okay, so BCE is BC and CE is AD. Okay. Now, Gnosticism incorporated all the elements of the mystery religions into an open religion for everybody. So they're taking Plato's and Socrates and Aristotle's idea that this needs to be available to everyone, and they're now putting it out there to everyone. They're making it really available to anybody who wants to understand how to do it. They utilize the somatics, the gymnastics, the tai chi, the yoga, and all those other things, the meditation, the hypnosis, and their practices. Okay? You could learn them. They would teach them to you. You could go to their house, and they would show you how to do all of that stuff. However, they were driven underground as heretics in 325 CE, and finally eliminated around 450 CE. The last of the outposts was eliminated, was destroyed by the Roman Catholic Church as a heresy right around 458 CE. Gnostic documents retrieved from Nag Hammadi in 1945 date back to around 367 CE. Okay? And Nag Hammadi is about 80 kilometers or 50 miles northwest of Luxor, Egypt. And we'll read from one of those second. Okay, the name itself comes from the Greek word gnosis, which means knowledge. Influenced by the Persian mystic Zoroaster and his teachings, he was right around. Scholars are still trying to find out exactly when he was born. Most of them agree it was right around 600 BCE. As well as by the Jewish, Egyptian, Greek, and Babylonian cultures that are flooding into Alexandria. Okay, the practice of Gnosticism comes from the Greek words gnathi sauton, know thyself. This was the motto that was inscribed on the temple at Delphi, and it was also the motto that comes to us from the mystery religions, and that Socrates emphasized: know thyself. Okay, know this consciousness which you are. Know that. That's what this is all about. Not know what your role is. Okay, not know what your psychological or sociological or familial role is, because that's not what you are. You are this consciousness out here that is eternal, never ending. Just happens to be interacting with this particular organism at this particular time and performing specific roles in this particular culture. Okay? So that's what know thyself means. Now, Neoplatonism, there were two that we want to look at today. Plotinus, the Greek is, there's the Greek, and it's pronounced Platonos, 205 CE to 270 CE, and Porphyry, okay? Porphyrios was his Greek name, 233 CE to 309 CE. Now, Plotinus wrote his Aeneas, which were then edited by Porphyry into 54 treatises, divided into 6 books with 9 treatises per book. Okay? That's where we get the name Aeneid from, because Aeneades comes from the Greek word for 9. That's why they're called that. All right. So he talks about the one. Okay. Now, in Greek, it is epsilon and then nu. So, hen, pronounced ain, the one. Heraclitus talked about the one and the many. The one and the many. The one and the many. Okay? And the way to practice Neoplatonism and Gnosticism is to practice enosis, unity with the one. Okay? So let's take a look at what the Aeneid says. Any questions while I find this? Okay, this is Aeneid 6, the 9th treatise on the good or the one, chapter 1, lines 1 through 10, and then lines 19 to 27. It is in virtue of unity that beings are beings. This is equally true of things whose existence is primal, and of all that are in any degree to be numbered among beings. Okay? What could exist at all except as one thing? Deprived of unity, a thing ceases to be what it is called. No army unless it's a unity. A chorus, a flock must be one thing. Even house and ship demand unity. One house, one ship. Unity gone, neither remains. Thus, even continuous magnitudes could not exist without an inherent unity. Break them apart, and their very being is altered in the measure of the breach of unity. Okay? Come thus to soul, which brings all to unity. Making, molding, shaping, arranging to order. There is a temptation to say, soul is the bestower of unity. Soul, therefore, is the unity. Soul bestows other characteristics upon material things and yet remains distinct from its gift. It bestows shape, ideal form, and the rest are all distinct from the giving soul. So, clearly, with this gift of unity, soul to make things unities looks out upon the unity just as it makes man, by looking upon man, the idea, realizing in the man, the individual, the unity belonging to man, the idea. Okay? There's a whole bunch of things in this room. If we wanted to, we could count them. However, our experience of them, visually at least, is as a synthetic totality. One unified perception. That's what the soul does. That's what the consciousness which we are does. It unifies everything because it itself is one. It is the one. Okay? It is the one that they're talking about. It is distinct from the many. Okay? So that's the Aeneid. Any questions about that? Okay. Oh, the Apocryphon of John. Hold on a second. We'll take a look at the Apocryphon of John. Now, in the cache of documents, of manuscripts at Nag Hammadi, there was one that became very popular almost immediately, and it's called the Apocryphon of John, the secret book of John. All right? And it is the story theoretically told by the Apostle John about the revelation from the resurrected Jesus Christ to John of the Gnosis, the secret knowledge. Okay? So this is what John has to say about the one. And I'll have a copy of this out there.
You say the Manassas?
The Gnosis. Gnosis. Gnosis.
Oh, okay.
Gnosis. So that's what we're talking about. Gnosis, gnosis, means knowledge of the one and the many. Okay? So I asked if I might understand this. And if the revelation from Jesus said, the one is a sovereign that has nothing over it. It is God and Father of all. The invisible one that is over all, that is incorruptible, that is pure light of which no eye can gaze. The one is the invisible spirit. We should not think of it as a God or like a God, for it is greater than a God, because it has nothing over it and no Lord above it. It does not exist within anything inferior to it. It does not exist within anything inferior to it, since everything exists within it alone. It is eternal, since it does not need anything, for it is absolutely complete. It has never lacked anything in order to be completed by it. Rather, it is always absolutely complete in light. The one is illimitable, since there is nothing before it to limit it. Unfathomable, since there is nothing before it to fathom it. Immeasurable, since there is nothing before it to measure it. Invisible, since nothing has seen it. Eternal, since it exists eternally. Unutterable, since nothing could comprehend it to utter it. Unnameable, since there is nothing before it to give it a name. Okay? Those are all descriptions of the one, of the consciousness which we are. The one is majestic and has an immeasurable purity. Okay, so this is a Gnostic text talking about the one, trying to describe the one. The Aeneid talked about the unification, the unifying nature of consciousness itself, the one. The Apocryphon actually describes it in terms that are majestic and that are godlike. I mean, you know, that is part of why the Gnostics were declared a heresy, because they basically said, I am God, you are God. The consciousness which we are is already God. Okay? Now, of course, to the powers that run the place, they don't want that. They don't want a bunch of people out there saying, hey, I'm God, you're God, everybody's God. They didn't like that. So that was one of the major reasons why it was declared a heresy. Okay? The Gnostic Neoplatonist interpretation of the book of Genesis, the story of Adam and Eve, is an interesting reinterpretation of the classical interpretation. Okay? Basically what they say is, look, here we are sitting in the Garden of Eden, and we've got Adam and Eve, and everything's cool, but nothing changes. Nothing grows, nothing develops, everything is sort of, you know, just kind of boring. So after, you know, 6,000 or 7,000 millennia, in walks the serpent. Walks. The serpent walks into the Garden of Eden. Okay, and notice, remember how he is described. How is the serpent described? It is the snake, but how is he described in Genesis?
As the devil?
No. No. Okay, as the wisest of creatures. The snake is the wisest of creatures. Okay? So this is coming from the original. This part of the book of Genesis was written probably about 800 BCE. The later part of it is probably written about 1200 BCE. But the Adam and Eve story, the creation myth, was written about 800 BCE, and then is now coming down to us and is being reinterpreted by the Gnostics. But that is in the original text. That's in the original.
And the Bible also says, be wise as a snake.
Yes, absolutely. Be wise as a serpent.
Yes.
Absolutely. The serpent is the wisest of creatures. So it comes into the garden and says, hey, Eve, I understand you're bored. Okay, well, why don't you go eat that fruit over there? And she said, well, the Elohim, the gods who put us here, said I'm not supposed to eat of that. So I haven't. And the snake says, well, you know, do you ever wonder why they don't want you to eat that? Okay, exactly. Okay? And the reason why they don't want you to eat that one, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, is because then you would be exactly like they are. Exactly like they are. Okay? So she says, wow, I like that. That sounds like a good idea. So she goes, talks to Adam, tells him what the snake told her. He says, well, all right, if you want to do it, let's go do it. So they go do it. And what happens as a result of their eating the tree of the knowledge of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil? What happens as a result of that?
Of course.
Right, they're evicted from the garden. Where did they go?
The world.
Here. Right, they go here. And what happens when they get here? They're confronted with all of this suffering and all of this other kinds of stuff. Okay, because here is where the gods are trained in the knowledge. And knowledge here, gnosis, knowledge means, you know, up close and personal, smell its breath experience of good and evil. Okay? You can't become a god without going through this training ground. That's basically what the book of Genesis is talking about. You can't do it. Cannot become a god. Cannot realize your full potential as a godlike being without going through this place and learning the nature of good and evil. Inside and out, backwards and forwards, up close and personal. So practice. How do they practice this? The unification, and gnosis. Okay? Remember, the one is ain. Gnosis is the unification of the one through contemplation and ecstasis. Ecstasy. What does ecstasis mean? Anybody remember what it means? Ecstasis. Standing outside of, next to yourself. Now, what does that refer back to? Death, exactly. Separation of the consciousness which we are from its attachment to this particular material object. So through contemplation and ecstasy, that is standing next to oneself, through the practice of death, through the journey to the underworld and then the return, okay, what we have described by Platonists is this sequence of ecstasies, sequence of the ecstasis itself. First, the material world will drop away. Then the body will drop away. Then the emotions will drop away. Then the thoughts and space-time will drop away. And finally, all that's left is unity with yourself, unity with the one. Now you've finally gotten to the point where there's nothing to distract you from what it is that you really are. The one. Okay? Now, according to Porphyry, the student who translated and edited, well, didn't translate, but edited his Aeneas, Plotinus achieved this state 4 times during the 6 years while they were together. So it's not something that everybody goes out, even the people who know how to do it, they don't go out and do it all the time because it's kind of, it's difficult to do that. They have to come back. Even if you go out to the mouth of the cave and hang out there amongst all the beautiful things, you still have to come back into the cave and hang out with those people who are chained down and don't know what's going on. So you still have to come back. All right, now let's compare that with the 8 meditative absorptions of Buddhism. All right, so these are the 8 meditative absorptions. This is the pathway to the one. This is the pathway to separating consciousness from the body, separating the thinking substance which we are from the extended substance of the body, using tranquility and insight meditation. So the first 4 are the tranquility part of this whole thing. First absorption is the elimination of unwholesome thoughts and feelings and the production of joy and bliss. The second absorption is the elimination of applied and sustained thought, the absence of discursive thought, and the production of rapture. So the constant internal dialogue is dropping away at this point. Third absorption, the fading away of rapture, which was produced by the second absorption, the production of equanimity and mindfulness. So now you're just sort of floating there, still aware of the body and the mind and the extended world. Okay? Fourth absorption, the final phase of tranquility meditation, disappearance of pleasure and pain, rapture, everything else is gone, dwells in neither pain nor pleasure, mind and body fallen off. Kenosis. Okay, so this is identical to Plotinus's description of his meditative practice. All right, and the pathway to kenosis. Okay, so they're identical. Again, everybody's talking about exactly the same thing here. They're using a little different terminology, but it's the same experience because it's the same world. There's no difference. And they're only talking about this one thing because this is the only thing that matters. All right, now we go to the final 4, which are insight meditation. The 5th absorption is the base of boundless space, then the base of boundless consciousness, then the base of nothingness, and then finally, the base of neither perception nor non-perception, which all of these, of course, are indescribable. I mean, there's no way to describe these kinds of things because they cannot be placed into words. But this is what happens after you reach the 4th meditative absorption. You're then able to go here. Okay? What is the one and how do we find it? What is the one?
What is God's reminder by meditation?
The one is
God?
That's Thomas Aquinas, okay? And they're gonna start talking about, from Aquinas on, we're gonna start talking about the one as if it were external to us. As if there were some external entity towards which we are now attempting to move and to join with. Okay? But the one from this point, from this perspective, is what? Godlike, yes, but not a God towards which we must move and unify with. It is what? It's us. We are the one. The consciousness that we are, the actual consciousness that you are, is the one. And you'll find it, you'll discover it by doing the meditative practice or by practicing phenomenology, which we'll learn how to do a little later on. Either way. Okay? Really simple, but difficult to get around. Okay? Because we identify with this thing. We think this thing is us. We believe that this thing is us. We act as if this thing is us. But this thing is not us. We have nothing in common with this thing except the fact that it was created specifically for our use. It is ours. But it has nothing to do with us. We are completely separate, independent, have nothing in common with anything in the extended world. Okay? Absolutely nothing.
Not even control of it.
Well, we have total control over the organism.
Yes.
Yeah, but we do not, we are not material. We're not oriented in space-time. We're not local. Okay? We're not mortal. Okay? All of the things that this thing is, we are not. Our essence is completely different from this thing. And the only reason we identify with it so much is because we haven't gone through this process. We haven't been trained to go through this process. So that we recognize the fact that we are not this thing. Or those things, or anything else. All right. Cool. Now, the early Christians. Christianity is an interesting application of the Neoplatonic and Gnostic ideas. Okay? From about 60 BCE, roughly, okay, to 325 CE, Gnostics and Neoplatonists united under the symbol of the Christos, the great mystery revealed to everybody. So the Christians said, wow, this is neat stuff. And it's easy. And we have a symbol. We have a symbol that we borrowed from the ancient, harvest rituals of the Egyptians.
It's spelled with an H.
What?
Christos.
Christos?
Mm-hmm. So in Greek.
Well, it's in English. It would be Christos.
Oh,
like that, yeah. Okay. In Greek, it's with a cut, a key. Okay. Christos, pronounced Christos, the anointed one. That's what it means, the anointed one. This is the symbol of the Christians. Now, this is the early Christians, remember. This is not the post-Nicene Christians. This is not the Roman Catholic Church. This is the one that led up to the Roman Catholic Church. Okay? So we have Christianos, who is a Christian. We have Christianismos, which is Christianity. But they all have that same root word. Okay? They all have that same root word, Christos. The anointed one. How was something or someone anointed? What does that entail? But how is it made special? What is specifically done to that object or person to anoint them? What's that?
They've been enlightened?
Well, we'll get to that, yeah. But there's a specific ritual that you go through. What do you do? Okay? You put oil on their forehead. You put consecrated olive oil on their forehead to anoint them. Now, why? Because way back when, in the ancient Egyptian mystery religion, okay, with Isis and Osiris and all of those, all of those particular pantheon of gods, which is exactly the same thing as we're talking here. They had the harvest. Every year at the harvest, they would consecrate this whole process because they're moving into winter now, and they're consecrating the fact that, the gods, the universe, everything else has provided them with food for the winter. So you make bread by chopping up the ingredients. You take the wheat and you take the rye and whatever else you're going to put into it, and you chop it up and you grind it or do whatever you're going to do with it. And what have you got? You got a whole bunch of stuff, and how do you make bread? Add oil to it. Okay? This is not the kind of bread that we have. It was essentially unleavened bread. Okay? So then you add oil to it, which then takes all of those disparate ingredients, the many, and puts them together into one. And it's now bread, unifying it. Okay? The many become the one, symbolically. All right? So the oil symbolically represents... Well, what does it symbolically represent?
The symbol is put together.
Well, but what is it that puts things together? What did the Aeneids talk about?
Oh, it means...
What is it that unifies everything? The one, and what is the one?
All these things together in one.
Yeah, but what is the one? Yes, we are the one.
Yeah.
Consciousness is the one.
Right.
The thinking substance which we are is the one that unifies everything. So the oil symbolically represents that thinking substance, that consciousness.
In the LDS religion, is put oil, anoint oil.
Yeah, they all do it. Yeah, all of them do it. And it all goes back to that. Even further back than the Egyptians. But because the Egyptians borrowed it from, the Sumerians and the Babylonians and everybody
But
else.
like in the Catholic, they don't put oil.
Oh, they do, absolutely.
They do
Bishops
put
are
oil.
consecrated, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you wouldn't be, okay, because you're a woman. Okay, so that would never happen to you.
They will not put oil to me?
Never.
Why?
Oil is reserved for,
Men.
that's right,
Why?
men. Because in 325 CE, Constantine called everybody together and said, I want you to make me a state religion. I only have two requests. Number one, no women. Ever. Anywhere. In the power structure. Never. And the other thing is, you guys pick and choose whatever books you want. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Okay? Pick whatever books you want, but Jesus has to be born on the 25th of December. That's it. Those are the only requirements he put down, and then he let them go at it. No women anywhere in power.
You mean in power? Oh, for the power. Okay, I understand.
Exactly.
And I know because there was a time when there was a woman that was pregnant and she had a bird and she was supposed to be a priest. You remember that? And she was right there and she had a baby right there. And that was wrong, and that's why they completely cut that off.
Exactly. Now, there were, if we go through the history, there were some female popes who were
Right.
actually, consecrated and everything else. But,
But this has to do with why?
well, because
They didn't want women in there?
they didn't want any women in
Because of
power.
that reason?
Constantine didn't want any
Okay.
women in there. Okay. So what does Christ in his story symbolically represent here? Well, he represents the one, and he also represents the journey. Okay, the journey of the one as it goes through its training here, learning the difference between good and evil. Okay? So that's what that is all about. And that's why they picked that particular symbol, and that's where the early Christians came from. They would have been Gnostics, they would have been Neoplatonists, they would have come together in Alexandria and everywhere else, and they would have just, trained everybody in this kind of stuff, using these particular myths and metaphors and stories and analogies and the techniques, meditation, hypnosis, so on and so forth. Now, St. Augustine is going to take this stuff, 354 CE to 430 CE, he is going to take this stuff, the Gnosticism, the Neoplatonism, and the Roman Catholic Christianity, and merge them together, and then set the foundation for modern philosophy with a very interesting analysis. Okay, his real name, Aurelius Augustinus Hipponensis, the Bishop of Hippo, which is modern-day Annaba in Algeria. Okay, so he would have been an African. He was influenced by Gnostic Manichaeism and the Neoplatonism of Plotinus. Now, Manichaeism is based on the works of Manichaeus, all right, who lived right around 216 to 276. Manichaeus, was born in Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq. All right, at the time it was governed by the Persians, modern-day Iranians. So this is all taking place right around Iraq, Baghdad, those places like that. Manichaeus took together the Persian, the Babylonian, the Mesopotamian Gnosticism that was existent at this point, which was descended from the Babylonian mystery religions, and incorporated this idea: the world is a struggle between the cosmic forces of good and evil. Again, we return to the garden. Now, you don't find this in ancient Greek philosophy. They're not concerned with good and evil, but the Gnostics are, because they're incorporating that idea from the Persians. Now, we do find reference to Zoroaster and the concept of good and evil in Plato, but it doesn't make it a cornerstone of ancient Greek thinking. But these guys do. Struggle between the cosmic forces of good and evil. Cosmos meaning order. Cosmos meaning order. Okay? The feature that everybody sees when you look at it, the cosmos, is that it is orderly. It's rule governed. And the question is it going to be the rules of the evil or the rules of the good? And that's what we're here to determine. Primary cosmological or teleological belief. Cosmological is the structure of things. Teleological is the purpose of things. So this is the primary, belief of the Zoroastrians from ancient Persia. And it is now incorporated by Augustine into Roman Catholicism. Okay. Okay, here's the soliloquies. This is early. This is very early when he's really young. And he's just having this internal dialogue with himself. And the R and the A are just the two aspects of this internal dialogue. You who desire to know yourself, okay, remember that Socrates' motto, that's the motto of the Gnostics, that's the inscription of the Temple of Delphi. Know yourself, know thyself. Okay, Gnathi Sauton. Do you know that you are, that you exist? I do. How do you know this? I don't know how I know this. Okay. Do you feel yourself to be simple or complex? Again, the one of the many. I do not know. Do you know yourself to be self-moved? I do not. Do you know that you think? I do. Is it then true that you think? It is true that I think. Do you know yourself to be immortal? I do not. Which among all of these things of which you have declared yourself ignorant would you choose to know first? And then the answer is, if I would be immortal. The one thing I really want to know is, am I immortal, or am I going to perish? You love then to live. I confess that I do. Okay, would it be enough if you should have learned that you were immortal? It would indeed be much, but for me too little. But this too little, how much joy will it cause you? Very much joy. Would you then weep for anything at all? For nothing at all. So in other words, if we can prove that we are this thinking substance, and that we are immortal, that would eliminate all of the sorrows and suffering. Same thing that the Buddha says. The first noble truth is recognizing the existence of suffering here, in the environs outside the Garden of Eden. And then, of course, the Noble Eightfold Path through meditation to eliminate suffering. All right. Now, from the Trinity, this is a little later. This is De Trinitatis. The knowledge by which we know that we live is the most inward of all knowledge, of which even the academic cannot insinuate, perhaps you are asleep. So he's arguing against the academics, okay? And do not know it, and you see things in your sleep. So he's saying the knowledge, this self-knowledge, this knowledge of the nature, of the real nature of yourself, okay, is the most inward of all knowledge, to be had only by contemplation, not by arguing in the public square. Trinity, Book 15, Chapter 12, Paragraph 21. But when it is said to the mind, this is going to repeat what we just read in the soliloquies, know yourself, then it knows itself by that very act by which it understands the word yourself. And this for no other reason than that it is present to itself. But if it does not understand what is said, then certainly it does not do as it is bid to do, and therefore it is bidden to do that thing which it does do when it understands the very precept that bids it. Okay, and then he elaborates on this. Yet whoever doubts that he himself lives, and remembers and understands and wills and thinks and knows and judges. Okay? Who does that? Whoever doubts. Is there anybody who is doubting at this moment that you're alive? Okay? Or that you remember things, or that you understand what I'm saying, or that you can will to do things, or that you think, or that you know, or that you judge. Is there anybody in this room who would deny that, who would doubt that? No. Seeing that even if he doubts, even if you were to doubt that, you live. If he doubts, he remembers why he doubts. If he doubts, he understands that he doubts. If he doubts, he wishes to be certain. If he doubts, he thinks. If he doubts, he knows that he does not know. If he doubts, he judges that he ought not to assent rashly. All of these things are things that have to be done because you are alive. So even doubting is proof that you are not only alive, but a conscious thinking substance. And then finally from the city of God. But without a delusive representation of images or phantasms, I am most certain that I am. Okay? What did the burning bush say to Moses? I am that I am. Okay? Again, the same thing, the same concepts from the Hebrew tradition. In respect of these truths, I am not at all afraid of the arguments of the academicians who say, what if you are deceived? Or if I am deceived, I am. Even if I'm deceived, I'm there to be deceived. There's still something living, something conscious that is being deceived. For he who is not cannot be deceived. And if I am deceived, by this same token I am. And since I am, if I am deceived, how am I deceived in believing that I am? For it is certain that I am, if I am deceived. Okay?
Does on the previous page when it says I'm seeing if I'm asleep, does that have anything to do with dreaming?
Well, that's what he's saying. He's saying the academicians, the people who are trying to confuse you, would challenge you and say, how do you know you're not sleeping? How do you know this isn't a big dream? And his response is, it doesn't matter whether it's a dream. There's still something here that's having the dream. It's the experience that's the key, not the label. Okay? And it is that core experience. Yeah, that really kicked on. All right. So here's the questions that we will take up next time when we talk about Descartes. Prove to yourself that you are real.
Well, we were created.
Well, we just went through that. How do we prove to ourselves that you're real?
Look around.
Look around. Have an experience. Talk to someone. Kick a rock. Okay? You know, do anything that takes will or that takes understanding or that does any of the things. These all prove indubitably, that is without being able to doubt it, that you are alive, that you have a consciousness, that you are real. Now, prove that your neighbor is real. This becomes a little more complex. Okay? We'll get to that a little bit later. That's more difficult. That is more difficult. All right, now very quickly, we're just going to blaze through this. The Dark Ages. St. Augustine dies, and the Roman Empire collapses, and the Dark Ages are ushered in. And Gnosticism is forced underground. Emperor Constantine creates the Holy Roman Church at Nicaea in 325 CE. They declare Gnosticism as a heresy for the reasons we talked about. The final Gnostic outpost is destroyed around 450 CE. The Roman Empire collapses shortly after. The library at Alexandria is finally destroyed during the Muslim conquest around 642 CE. All the Greek and Roman and Egyptian and Persian and Babylonian documents are lost. Everything is destroyed. Okay? Or is missing. Okay? But they're no longer at the library at Alexandria because it is completely destroyed. Literacy declines along with civilization in the old Roman Empire. Okay, there's the rise of Islamic Arabia and the Muslim conquest, which expanded the Arab Empire throughout the Middle East, Egypt, and Northern Africa. Muslim conquest of Spain occurs around 700 CE. From about 800 to 1100, there is a massive translation of Aristotle into Arabic. So even though the library at Alexandria is destroyed, and that is no longer available to the Western world, the Persians, the Arabs, the Muslims, these guys have access to it, and they translate it into Arabic. Okay, mostly in Spain. That's why this was important. Spain becomes a center of learning, becomes a center of universities, and that's where these translations are occurring.
Still are finding books and everything. That's why a lot of the books in the let's say the Catholic, they don't have all the books because they were not, they were hiding.
Right, exactly, very, very much so. So finally, the Muslims conquered the Holy Land in 1071. And that initiates the Crusade, this ongoing battle between the Christians and the Muslims over who occupies Jerusalem. Okay? And that, so between 1071 and 1291, I'm sorry, between 1095 and 1291, there's this constant crusades. Okay? Just constant internecine warfare all the time. In 1129, they established the Knights Templar because the Christians have taken back Jerusalem, and they need safe passage for all of the pilgrims from wherever they're coming. And so they create the Knights Templar from the Knights Hospitaller in 1129. And so the Knights Templar become the first of the modern banking system. Because if I'm wealthy and I want to make the trip to Jerusalem, and I'm coming from London, let's say, I don't want to pack around a bunch of gold. It's heavy, it's easy to rob, makes me a target. So I take it to the commandery of the Knights Templar in London, and I give them my bar of gold, and they give me a piece of paper that says, hey, he left us a bar of gold. I take that piece of paper with me to Jerusalem, where I take it to the commandery there, and they then give me my bar of gold from their bank. Okay?
They give their share part of it.
They do. They will take their share, absolutely. So anyway, so the Knights Templar become very wealthy very quick. Birth of St. Thomas Aquinas in 1225, so he's going to follow right along. Okay, now, Thomas initiated a renaissance of Christian theology from the importation of Aristotle from the Arabic. That is what he did. He got those Arabic versions of Aristotle, and he translated it into Latin, okay? And began writing the Summa Theologica between 1265 and 1274 when he died. So it's incomplete. It's huge. I mean, it's big. Okay, it means the compendium of theology. He intended it to be everything there was to know about theology. Okay? And he would have done it, except that he died too soon. Now, the Templars had secret initiation rites. Why are they important? Because they are the hidden pathway. They're the hidden pathway of the Gnostic and Neoplatonic tradition of the ancient mystery religions. They had secret initiation rites. They were the secret carriers of the Gnostic and ancient mystery traditions. Because of their wealth and power, they were declared heretics in 1307. Jacques de Molay, their grand commander, was burned at the stake on Friday, October 13, 1307. Okay? Their holdings were confiscated by the church and controlled at the Fourth of France. The rest of the membership was forced to flee to England, Scotland, Ireland, wherever they could go. All right? This exodus formed the foundations for the Masonic order from about 1390 to its first publicly declared lodge in 1717. The first of the great modern secret societies.
When Italy gets in?
Italy? Oh, it's all through here. It's all through this whole time.
Because I didn't see any.
Yeah. Well, Aquinas is going to be there. And all of this is taking place in Italy because Rome is the center of the Roman Catholic Church.
The first pope was Melquiades, and that was like in 1310.
Well,
the first pope.
The actual first pope of the Roman Catholic Church would have been Constantine.
Yeah, but that, you know, then
yeah, and then from then on we have a whole series of them. At the time that the Templars are declared a heresy, there are two popes. Clement V, who's the one who declares them heretics in France, and then you've got, I can't remember the other guy, in Rome. So they have this big argument.
That's why at the In Italy, there is a main artery called Meditative because it's after his name.
Yep. And so, I mean, they're involved in all of this stuff from the very beginning. The Roman Empire, the military empire, was actually, you know, it dissolved in 476, okay, because they couldn't maintain it.
476?
476.
Okay, then it's
And then, from that point on, basically it carried on under the power and authority of the church. So it just sort of changed its, because it was still there, it just wasn't called the same thing. All right, any questions about what we've covered today? The one, the many, okay, all of that. Remember, this is experiential. You will understand all of this by the end of the semester, by the end of the course. Okay, and it is important because
I love it.
yeah, because this is what it's all about. The Buddha said that the cause of all suffering is ignorance of the actual nature of reality. And by that he meant the distinction between the extended world and
That's why meditation on them is the healing of the body.
yes. Okay, so next week, the Great Mystery is redefined, the Cartesian Revolution and the origins of modern philosophy from Rene Descartes on. The Alchemist to Bishop George Martin. So we'll talk about all those people there, and we will see how Descartes revolutionizes this idea using the clues left by St. Augustine. All right, any questions? Comments?
No, I love it.
Yeah.
I'm freezing.
It is really cold today.
Anybody else?
Yeah, when that thing kicked on, it really got cold.
It is, I bring a cold mix. I do have a question. Why
Mhm.
there were so many books hiding?
Well,
Again, for the power, right? They didn't
well,
really
a lot
need the
of
power.
it was that. Yeah, a lot of it was because
They keep
they.
ignorant, right?
Yeah, they wanted, you know, if you're setting up a sort of a slave state,
Right.
you know, like the Egyptians, or like the Babylonians, or like the Sumerians, or like the Mesopotamians, or like the Greeks, or like the Romans, or like everybody else along the history of humankind. What you need to do is you need to find a way to keep the slave population in line. So one of the things that you do is you limit their food intake. Now the Egyptians had it down to a science, 800 calories of bread and water in a specific formula. That would give the slaves just enough energy to go out and do, you know, a half a day's work. But by the end of that half a day's work, they would be too exhausted to, like, you know, have a rebellion or run away. Also because there's no protein in it, because there's no meats, they can't think really clearly. So for thousands of years.
That's probably the base of the 2,000 calorie ratio.
Yeah. And so, you know, that's one way of doing it. The other way is not letting them learn how to read. I mean, what happened after the Civil War here? Okay, I mean, ostensibly, we fought this huge war in order to eliminate slavery and to free the African American people who were slaves. Okay, but it was illegal for them to read. It was illegal for them to learn how to write. It was illegal for them to own weapons. It was illegal for them to vote. It was illegal for them to own land. So all of those things were then legally imposed upon them, even though they were technically freed by Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. So these are all the methods by which the ruling class maintains its power base.
Well, in England, you still don't own your house.
Right.
It's owned by the government.
It is true. That is true. You pay rent to it every year
They lease you
in the
for
form of
100 years.
yeah, well, forever.
That belongs to the government.
Yep. Same thing with your car.
With a car, anywhere in England,
Here.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you registered your car. Registration. To register means to give to the king. Regis. So when you go down and register your car, what you're doing is you're essentially giving it to the state.
I didn't know
And
that.
then they give you the right to use it if you follow their rules and regulations and pay them money.
Oh my. It's amazing.
Okay, so yeah, so these, I mean, this
I
is
know
all.
the houses, but I didn't know
Yeah, and
the
the houses,
cars,
the houses are essentially registered again, and then
Yes.
you have the property
You
tax
don't
on
own
that.
anything.
Yep,
You
you
don't
really
give
don't.
it to your kids.
Yep.
It just doesn't work that way.
So anyway, this is
The kid can have it if they sign another contract with the government. Yes.
exactly, yeah.
But
It
it
is
belongs to
transferred,
them.
yeah. So, all right, any other questions or comments about this? All right, we'll see you in 2 weeks then.
Okay.
And I'll put out the reading material will be out there if you wanted to review that. The bibliography's there. I'll make a shorter bibliography of just the things we covered today. So if you wanted to go find it, you can find it. Most of this stuff is online. Okay, most of it is online and easily accessible.
Online?
Online, yeah, you
Where
can just
do you get
download
it?
it. Well, I like the hard copies if
Oh.
I can get them.
I don't know, I was thinking about that, but I don't know for me that would be a little.
But most of the ancient stuff is online since it's no longer copyrighted.
That's maybe a new.
So are we talking then we meet again on 1st of October?
1st of October. 1st of October. All right?
Okay.
And those who are taking the other classes, I'll see you this afternoon.
What other classes are there?
The meditation will resume next Tuesday. Yeah, and then the hypnosis class it goes straight through. There's no breaks. So it'll meet again this afternoon if you're in there. Okay? Anything? It is kind of overwhelming, but this is fundamental human knowledge. This is knowledge about who and what we are as human beings in this particular space, four-dimensional space-time continuum. And so,
Yeah, I have not a question, but yesterday we were listening to a talk at church. We were talking about salvation. And
Yes.
Salvation is here. And except for the Buddha, and the Buddha initially says that, but then gets to somewhere else. Would you have any idea?
well, Buddhist soteriology, which is the study of salvation. Soteriology is the branch of philosophy dealing with the salvation of souls from, this place here. So his path is simple. It's the Noble Eightfold Path to the extinction of suffering. Once the extinction of suffering is accomplished, then the salvation is accrued. Okay, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Yeah. Okay. So in other words, practicing the meditation. Remember, we only need to be saved from this because this thing right here is going to, suffer and die. Okay, but once we know what it is to be the thinking substance which we are, and we can detach from this, then that's salvation. That is the process. Then salvation is done. There's nothing else to save us from.
So that's what the Buddha is.
That's what they all say. That's what the Christians say. That's what everybody says.
So the path is just as well.
No, the path is the same. Yeah, meditation, contemplation. Yeah, it's always the same. Same path, same objective, same method, same everything.
But why would the Buddha be different?
He's not.
Did you hear that? You know what I'm talking about? She mentioned, she says, the salvation is here. And then she said the Buddha says that initially, but it goes somewhere else. And I like to ask.
Yeah, ask because that, yeah.
Yeah, because
that
didn't make sense.
Yeah, and it's not, that is not an accurate representation of the Buddhist.
So what
doctrine.
meditation are we doing? Tranquility?
We're doing tranquility meditation, which then will lead to insight meditation, right? Because once the tranquility has been achieved, that is, once this structure has removed its awareness from the external world, and then systematically remove it from the awareness of the body itself, then what's left is the consciousness which you are. That's all that's left. Mind and body fall off. And the only thing of which you are aware then is the consciousness which you are, this thinking substance. Because the awareness of everything else in the extended world is gone. And so now you can just sit there and hang out and begin to recognize what it is, what you are, self-knowledge, know yourself at that point. Now, this has serious implications for behaviors once we re-establish connection to the organism here and are now dealing with other thinking substances, interacting with their avatar. This is an avatar, okay? okay? And we'll get to that. We'll talk about that with Descartes. And so, it's me talking through the body. It's me looking through the body's eyes. And so you have to get used to that. It's a little disconcerting at the beginning, but once you get used to it, then it starts to feel right. Okay? Most of the problems that we have, most of the psychosomatic difficulties that we have, are because we confuse the thinking substance which we are with this thing. And so we make demands on this thing that it cannot possibly meet. It cannot do what we ask it to do because we're asking it to do something that it can't do. And so once we understand the difference between the two, we stop doing that. We stop asking it to do all of these things that it cannot do. And so that eliminates all of the psychosomatic difficulties that we have, leaving only the natural progression of the organism's life cycle, which is useful, which is also useful. Okay? Okay?
Yeah.
So yeah. And again, this is all experientially based. This is not theory. This is like you can learn how to do this.
So next week, I think we can
Okay.
next week for the meditation.
Oh, okay, because you'll be out of town. That's no problem. Yeah, we'll just pick up the following week with that.
Oh, okay, so if I come, I won't be completely lost.
No, and you'll always have we'll have the video and everything, so you can. Yeah. Oh, go pick up your CD. That's fine. Okay, yeah, then just practice. You'll see almost immediately. The more and more relaxed you become, the more and more coherent state you achieve, the easier it is to recognize the fact that what it is that you are is now standing out.
Well, I can even see when you do meditation with the plumbing, even without it, a taste.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a difference. Yeah,
it's
just
like,
getting that breathing cycle. Yeah.
So,
Again, it's not, like I said, it's not hard. It's really simple.
Okay.
Anything else?
You.
Okay, see ya.
Okay, see you, thanks.
No?
I need the password. I didn't get all the password. I need the password.
Oh, the password is NKA fall,
NKAF.
fall, F-A-L-L, fall semester, 2012, 2012. Yeah, so
Okay.
really, something really simple.
Yeah, it's simple.
Yeah, very, very, so that everybody can remember it.